John, welcome to the Guild of Dads podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, likewise. Now, it's interesting that I've kind of come across you again, John. And I say that in the nicest possible way because I first picked up your book, I think probably in the 90s, either shortly before or shortly after I met what is my now wife, who we have two beautiful children with. And so I'm kind of 20 years down the line from first kind of picking up your book. And now having started the Guild of Dads podcast, I cover, relationships, physical health, mental health, all these different kind of subjects. So I was really keen to get you on to speak to me just to kind of find out where we are at sort of 20 years on from the kind of book's release sort of thing and how the kind of game has changed, if any, sort of thing.
I'm really happy to be with you. Those are my favorite topics, relationships and health and wellness.
And what I think is one of the most interesting things to kind of unpackage right now at this kind of particular kind of moment in time is that what I've noticed right now more than any other time in history is that there are kind of powers that be that are looking to or seeking to kind of homogenize the characteristics of kind of men and women in recent years in terms of trying to make women more kind of masculine and men kind of more kind of feminine. And I wonder, if I ask you this first, how do you feel that this kind of is kind of impacting on the awareness of how men and women are actually fundamentally very different? How is that impacting on this whole kind of quest, if you like, to discover how men and women are different?
Well, it's a lot of denial of what's real. And I've been fighting this battle. It has been a battle. I'm not allowed in universities in America. It's not a safe space to talk to me. I'm considered a sexist because simply I say men and women are different. And yet 50 million people around the world love my work. It helps relationships. But generally when people aren't in relationships, they don't recognize what really happens between men and women. Some of the simple concepts of Men Are From Mars were validated back in the 80s when I started teaching these ideas, 90s, because it was people's experience. The powers that be were saying, all of the differences between men and women are conditioned by society. And that's true, that a large portion of what is okay for men to do, like in most cultures, you can't wear a dress. Okay, that's an example. And cultures tell us certain things that, certainly women couldn't vote in America. Women weren't politicians. And now we're free. Women can do the things that were traditionally masculine. Men can do the things that are traditionally feminine. A lot of men stay home, take care of their kids. If the wife makes more money or a lot of times because of divorce, fathers took their kids. They say, well, then I want equal time. And they would now start learning and benefiting. It's a wonderful thing to be a father. I've seen a lot of fathers who are actually disengaged because they're just making money doing what men traditionally do. And because of divorce, they said, well, wait a second, now I'm not experiencing my children through my wife. She's in a different world. I want to experience my children. Because that's a difference between men and women, just speaking in terms of the boys and girls. I could be traveling, teaching. I'm the main provider of my relationship. So I'm traveling. My wife said, oh, the kids did this, the kids did that. And I felt connected to my kids through my wife. Whereas if my wife was not my wife anymore and those children were off somewhere else, I wouldn't be able to experience my children that way. So men after divorce often will say, I want equal custody. I want equal time with my kids. And what that does for men actually has created a greater sense of fatherhood for men, which is to recognize they can be a nurturer as well. So that's a really great thing. So there's a freedom today for men to be more on what would be traditionally feminine and for women to do what's traditionally masculine. Now that's all good. You should have a choice, a freedom. But biologically, you don't have so much leeway, biologically. And this is where in the last many years of my most recent book, Beyond Mars and Venus, I've been able to sort of create a bulletproof argument for those who don't believe in gender differences that nobody can disagree with. And that is what's happening to women today, and it's a huge crisis, is they have hormonal imbalance. So many women have low estrogen levels. period problems, PMS, inability to fall in love. This is all having to do with estrogen, not enough estrogen. And for men, they're having all these issues with low testosterone. And that's the testosterone hormone is produced when you're doing traditional male things. And the estrogen hormone is produced when you're doing traditional female things. So there was a benefit for men and women to have these roles. At the same time, it was too constricting because I'm a spiritual guy. On a spiritual level, we're both masculine and feminine, but we got to respect the body. And so when women go to their male side, they make testosterone. That's okay as long as that's not her whole life. If she anticipates leaving work, so to speak, into a personal life that generates female hormones, she can be in balance. But if she has no personal life that generates female hormones, she's stuck on her male side, she'll feel overwhelmed. She'll feel dissatisfied. She'll feel I can't fall in love. Her mind will become hypercritical. She will tend to loop on negative things. She feels a pressure. She doesn't have enough estrogen in order to enjoy sex even and have orgasm experiences. So that's all because she's too far on her male side, where she could be on her male side if she also nurtured her female side. The flip side is true for men. What we see today with men is greater addictions. We see men being addicted to porn. We see men being addicted to different substances. We see men procrastinating. We see men needing to take Viagra. All these various types of imbalances are all due to low testosterone and high estrogen. So let me simplify. Healthy testosterone and less estrogen is good for men. More estrogen and less testosterone is good for women. When they go too far out of balance, we can measure these hormones out of balance in someone, and you can see adrenaline gets produced chronically, which then produces lasting cortisol, stress hormones, which we know is when your brain doesn't function in a loving, positive way. When you're in stress hormones, your instincts take over, your conditioning takes over. You're not able to function from the prefrontal cortex when you're having stress hormones. And therefore you can't reflect on behaviors and change behaviors that don't work. Interesting.
So you've kind of set out the kind of physiological effects that are going on underneath the bonnet, so to speak, or under the hood, as you guys would call it, and how they kind of, on a kind of practical level, prevent solutions being identified and followed through in terms of relationships. How does that manifest itself if you're in a man-woman relationship and you are invested in that relationship and you've got a rough idea as to how you want the relationship to go, but in actual fact and I'm going to use the word they, meaning kind of society, are saying to you, well, you should show up as this kind of man in your relationship, or you should show up as this kind of woman in your relationship. I've explored this with another guest, a couple of other guests, Athol Kay and Robert Glover, and they both say that kind of the problem is so much of this stuff that they say is creeping into intimate relationships and basically sabotaging everyone.
I'm right with you there. What they say is messing things up. And if the proof of it is high levels of divorce and dissatisfaction and inability to fall in love and get married following what they say. And people who follow what I say, which is all I'm saying is you make all your choices, you decide, but when it's not working, I point out why it's not working. And it's if you're navigating a boat a long time ago, you'd have to have the North Star because your boat's going to go this way or that way. You know where you are based upon where that North Star is. With relationships, if we know where the North Star is, then we can reflect on what we're doing and then find our choices to find balance again. But you have to know what balance looks like. If you're a woman and you're feeling overwhelmed, the solution is not to do more, but your brain's saying, I have to do more, I have to do more. The solution is do less. That's it. You have to stop doing some more, but your brain will tell you, no, you have to do. And for men, if you're addicted to sitting there watching television, your solution is not to watch television because it feels good. Just like women, they feel compelled. I have to do this. I have to do this. No, your mind is way out of balance. You have to know, I have a serious problem here. And what can I do to fix it? I have to go somewhere else. But if you don't know where to go, Now, for women, where do you go when your mind is so busy, busy, busy? You go to your emotions and your feelings. That's your estrogen side. So if you know how to go to your emotions and feelings, and then you learn new skills, how to communicate these emotions and feelings at the right setting and in the right way. Some things you should not communicate to your husband, like complaining. See, complaining is really a primitive, that's what they say to do. That's your conditioning in your brain. Complain, demonstrate. This is, if we're monkeys, like we have monkey brain inside. We have conditioning, goes all back to monkeys and snakes. How do this is, our brain has the DNA of snakes in back here, dinosaurs, and then it has the DNA of monkeys. And then right here in the front part of the brain, we have the DNA of humans. And so if we're monkeys, we don't communicate. We don't have a language thing so well. So you step on my foot, what do I say? Ow. And you keep doing it, to get louder and louder and louder. So raising your voice to get somebody to change is monkey behavior. Yet how many couples, when they start getting married, they become monkeys? Our children, no clearer evidence of this than watching the American debates, the presidential debate. It's like 2 8-year-olds. No, you did that. Interrupting each other, yelling at each other, getting mad at each other, calling names of each other. Oh my God, these are the worst, most primitive communication skills there are. Let me hit you over the head with my club. This is what it's about. This is what has been reduced to in our society today, because there's so much stress due to hormonal imbalance, as men have to feel ashamed to do what men naturally need to do. And women are basically ashamed of their emotional reactions because they feel weak and they feel irrational or non-logical. So they push it down, which makes their emotional reactions even more illogical and irrational. Let me give you an example. For 10 years, long time ago, I was a marriage counselor, and women came to me 8 hours a day. I sat in my chair, clocked in the hours, and women would come in unhappy with their husbands. And they say, how do I get him to change? How do I get him to change? And, that's what they're there for. But what I'm there for is to teach them, we don't have to change him at all. We have to change you. And if a man came to me, and only 10% of my clients were men, and that's an average, women go to counselors more than men. And a man came in, he would say, how do I change my wife? And I would say, well, you got to change yourself first, and you got to do this and this and this. He'd go, great. Men are problem solvers. We instinctively know that if there's a problem, we've got to change it. But women think if there's a problem in the relationship, you got to change. And that's true. But how do you motivate your partner to change? By stop trying to change him. Nobody wants somebody to try to change you. Learn to change yourself. So in doing this, I would say, I can't get to the solution right away, but I need to know more information. So then she says, okay, we're going to get to the solution soon. And then I would just ask questions about how they feel, go deeper into their emotions. They would feel heard. Their estrogen levels will go up, and they do. And they would leave the office happy. Every time you come in the office unhappy, leave happy. Now, what does that mean? That means all those emotions were pretty much irrational. Because nothing in the world has changed. I haven't given you any new strategies to change your partner. You did something to yourself, and now you feel better. That's what we have to recognize. Negative emotions, they're real. We need to hear them, but they're like a little baby monkey crying out, mommy, mommy, mommy. It needs to be heard. Then for women, their estrogen levels will go up. Their stress levels will go down. Blood flows to the front part of their brain. And then they can clearly see, okay, things are not as bad as I thought. And 2 is I have the power to make changes by learning new skills, and I can get better results in my relationship. It's amazing. For women, it's sharing feelings with somebody who's not interrupting or trying to fix or solve or whatever, which is what I teach in Men Are From Mars. They resolve within themselves. And if women could just learn, men are different. Don't ask us all about our feelings and feel empathy and compassion for us. A little is okay. But you need more. Give us our space. Don't try to change us. Don't try to penetrate into us. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? Let's talk about the relationship. He doesn't need to do that. You may need to do that, then you can talk. But he doesn't need to do it. See, the irony here, is women all think if I'm asking questions of you, that's going to make things better. Actually, she asks questions of you because she's afraid to share herself. If she needs connection through communication, she needs to open up and find her vulnerable feelings and get back to her feelings of love. And you, as a man, we have to realize our role is not to become these soft, sensitive guys who talk about their feelings and their needs and their wishes and wants. We have a female side. But if I put my female side to the side and I focus on her and give her the support she needs, everybody's happy. And I'm happy too, because all it takes is for me to feel and experience I made a difference in her, and my hormones change. My testosterone goes up, and I have no problems. All of our problems, we invent them all. It's all so much imaginary, and then we make it happen, start yelling at people and doing stuff. Oh, the drama that people create. Yeah. We all create. I've done it all. I completely understand all this because my own experience.
Yeah, and it's fine. It sounds like it's finding that harmony. It's interesting where you're describing this to me. I had a conversation with a gentleman called Oscar Trimboli, who his speciality is deep listening. And he recounted a story to me where he was working with a guy to improve his listening skills. And this guy's wife said to this guy, she said, right, I need you to just be honest with you. I know what's happening. You're having an affair, aren't you? And so he'd been working with this guy, Oscar, on his listening skills for quite a period of time. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. And she said to him, you're having an affair, aren't you? I can tell because you've been different for the last sort of couple of months. And he said, no, I've been working with the guy to improve my listening skills. And the long and short of it is their relationship had metamorphosized in the space of 2 months, just purely through him improving his listening skills.
Now, let me underline, he improved his listening skills. It'd be great if women could learn to listen, but they first need to learn how to share. They think they're great listeners, but actually they're not. If you share anything negative, they never forget it. So basically, it's the man, cool, calm, collected, researching. What he's doing when you're listening is you're penetrating. That's what we do in sex. We penetrate the woman. The woman doesn't penetrate us. This is the male-female balance. And then he can certainly open up and share whatever, but that's not the great need inside of men. The great need inside of men is to feel successful in providing for her. When you do that, your emotional disturbances inside disappear. And these men who feel like, oh, I'm so needy, I need to talk about my feelings. Well, that hurts my feelings. Well, I'm grumpy about that. This is all because he has too much estrogen. That's where it comes from. It's simply going into some altered state of humanity where you're out of balance. Come back to who you are, which is a man. And men don't have all these upsets that women have. And what women are embarrassed by those upsets, by the way. And so what they do is they deny it and go to their male side. So when a woman is rushing around doing, she's running away from her female side, because if she was to just go, oh, I feel like I can't do it all. I'm scared. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I'm afraid you won't like me. I'm afraid our love's gone down the toilet. I'm afraid I can't have orgasms. Whatever it is, she's got all kinds of stuff inside. Worries about her children, worries about work, worries about money. And if she was to talk about them, they would lighten up and disappear, because it's just negative emotions. See, when you hear them with empathy and compassion, not trying to fix them, estrogen will go up. But if she takes her negative emotions and shares them with her partner with the intention that now you have to change, otherwise I can't be happy, not only does she push his testosterone down and he won't change, but her own estrogen levels don't go up because she's solving a problem. She has to realize if you're upset, that's your problem. If he's upset, that's his problem. You can't solve it. We're grown-ups. We're not children. As children, I am upset. My parents will solve the problem. You know how they do it? They listen to me. They hear me. They understand. And then they say everything's going to be okay. Okay, that's the bottom line of what happens. I mean, parenting is a whole nother subject, very complex. But the whole idea with kids and the whole idea with women's emotions is to hear them and validate them. But don't solve the problem by telling her she shouldn't feel the way she does. Let her find out another way to feel, because her estrogen levels go down. So we don't have to solve all her problems. Her mood will change if her estrogen levels are restored. And That's one of the basic ideas. So, as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing kind of what I've done over the last, that society has morphed over to women going to men, men going to women, more that. But what my Beyond Mars and Venus book focuses so much on the hormonal differences between men and women to actually explain why the techniques in Men Are From Mars work.
Yeah.
And why men are the way they are, women are. But the new book is beyond that because it focuses more so than Men Are From Mars. It focuses on if women have symptoms over here like they're from Mars, how to bring them back to Venus. And if men have symptoms of being too far on Venus land, how to come back to Mars. And to be able to see the symptoms of that. Because often when women who are too far on their male side, we'll put it that way, would read Men Are From Mars, they'd often say, well, I feel like I'm from Mars. I go, yeah. That's because you're out of balance.
So
you're a woman.
So would that lead to kind of slightly more matriarchal tendencies within the relationship? So the woman is becoming more of a kind of matriarch, if you like. So they are, and the expression guys use is, I feel like my wife wears the trousers in this relationship. You typically hear it from nice guys, but generally...
Yes, you hear from nice guys who are on their sensitive side, the women bosses them around, and they're okay with it, but they're not having sex. And usually today, the woman will become dissatisfied with him and get a divorce. Because they say to me, the woman on the other side of that says, I feel I want a real man. I feel like I'm his mother. I do so much for him.
Yeah.
It's really, she created the problem. She doesn't see how she created it. And from the other side, he created the problem by giving up his masculinity because they say you shouldn't take your cave time. That's pretty much the number one thing I focus on here is they say you shouldn't take your cave time. Because cave time is all types of activities that a woman thinks are a waste of time. But actually, they're essential for men to rebuild their testosterone. Now, the flip side of this is what they say is men should talk all about their feelings. We have to communicate, right? So she's gonna express her feelings, and he's gonna get defensive. But they say you should now express how you feel.
Otherwise, it's toxic.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's toxic masculinity if you don't express your feelings.
Yeah. As soon as he expresses the feelings, it's an accelerate. Every argument, every dysfunctional thing that happens in a relationship starts when somebody expresses feelings. And if it's a woman expresses feelings first, the man reacts defensively and expresses his feelings, and it'll escalate. If the man just goes, oh, I feel hurt when you say that. That's what they tell men to do. Suck it up, man. No big deal. Don't whine and complain. Be a man. And, you can have these feelings inside. Don't share them with her. You can go to your friends, by the way, and you can make jokes about it. You need to lighten it up. Women need to get heavy. Men need to get light. And if I can stay light, not lightening her, but embrace who she is, my own sensitivities increase in a positive way instead of a negative way. You see, for me to say make love with my wife, I'm like a Ferrari. I want to go for it. But I'm with a woman and I know she has needs to go slow. So I have to slow myself down for her. And by slowing myself down for her and having her appreciate that, my own female side, I'm respecting my own female side at that time, but I'm very masculine at the same time. I'm still wanting to get in there. So I'm not giving up my masculinity to go to my female side. If my wife is crying and I can listen to that and penetrate that, I relate to her pain. So I'm in touch with my sensitivity, but I'm cool, calm, collected. I'm not defensive. As opposed to one person gets emotional, the other person gets emotional, escalates like monkeys. That's what happens all the time. Somebody's got to bring some logic into this, some presence into this, some deep listening. If you use that phrase, it's so good. But if a woman was to practice deep listening on her husband, and he was practicing opening up and sharing, you're going to get more role reversal. Now, there's a place in a man if he has wounds from 2 years old to 13 years old. Up around that time, the little boys all have the same estrogen levels as a little girl, which means that if you're disappointed or you're hurt or you cry and somebody makes you wrong, it is a trauma. Okay, it's an upset inside. So later on in life, those traumas do tend to come up. Men start getting needy and sensitive, but they shouldn't go to their wife and express all that to get her to change. ideally, he first learns how to process those feelings through a therapist, a coach, or on his own. My books explain, these are 28 of my books. I got all this stuff down. If I'm upset, I sit down, I go to my cave. I don't do it with my wife because I need to lower my estrogen and increase my testosterone. So how do I do that? I go to my cave and I write out what I'm feeling. So I embrace, I don't suppress anything. I look at what I'm feeling and I know, okay, while I'm doing this, this is all just my stuff. This is just irrational stuff. I'm not going to throw it on my partner, but I'm going to look at it so I can let go of it. See, that's the thing. If you just look at, so I'm angry about this, I'm angry about that, I'm hurt about this, I'm sad about this, I'm afraid of this. Just penetrate inside yourself, okay? Listen to this stuff. Then you'll always find underneath it is unmet wants and wishes and needs and love. These are layers of emotion. Then you basically, because you analyze, whenever you analyze, you produce testosterone. That's a masculine quality. So as I'm talking here, I know for some women listening, it's like I'm saying you can't be masculine. Yes, you can. You all have that masculine quality. It's just that when you're stressed, if you're feeling negative in any way, if you're not feeling appreciative, grateful, trusting, accepting, at ease, if you're not feeling that, you're out of balance. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your masculine quality, but you're putting too much over there. You need to come back to your female hormones. Because when your hormones are in balance, you feel what I just said, those positive feelings. And life, so does that mean, here's John Graham, an expert on I don't get upset about stuff. My wife doesn't get upset about stuff. Of course we do. Even if you're a master tightrope walker, the wind blows, you tilt to the side, but you quickly come back into balance. You don't go all up and to the right and then write a whole book on how men are bad. Toxic this, toxic that. Oh, this is like, we're going crazy focusing on the negative side of this instead of learning to take responsibility for being out of balance. I'm thinking about all these safe zones at universities, since I mentioned it before, how people are so easily offended. So offended by some of the things I say. I said, what's your problem? And by the way, did you know that to take offense is to offend? It's to make somebody wrong. It's living in a victim state. If you live in a victim state, your brain just sees negativity.
Yeah, I think as well, this kind of negative state is actually meaning that people aren't actually looking at the true definition of words either, because I've had to, and I'm not going to bang on again about this on this interview because you can just go down a rabbit hole on it. I've confronted quite a few men online who have flippantly used the word toxic masculinity, which incidentally I find quite offensive. Okay, but when you take it, when you do a bit of research on it, and I've actually done a little bit of online research on this. Okay. There's no one definition as to what it means, okay? So there's a number of different definitions as to what this actual term kind of means. No one can agree on what the true definition of it is.
There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Masculinity is this beautiful force. Femininity is this beautiful force. Toxic femininity would be women on their male side. Toxic masculinity is women on their male side. And toxic femininity, if you want to use that phrase, I don't even want to throw it on it. It's like saying toxic God or something. It's men on their female side. Men only become toxic when they start buying into I should be more sensitive and female. And women become toxic when they're over their male side. And then they claim men are toxic. They're toxic. And there is toxicity. Why don't we just say bad men, good men, good men?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But what's interesting is when you actually take these terms apart that people are throwing around, and not just in relation to masculinity, but in relation to a lot of, it seems to be if people don't like something, what they do is they give it a label, which is actually not accurate. So when you look at the dictionary definition of toxic and all of the things that are toxic, and then you cross-reference it with the kind of characteristics of a so-called toxic masculinity, you actually look at it and you think, actually, none of these traits are A, toxic, and B, specific to the masculine. They are traits that cross genders universally. Yes. So not only is the meaning of the word toxic wrong, but also the implementation of it's wrong because it doesn't apply specifically to one gender. These are traits that apply across genders, across age groups, across probably different cultures as well. So to try and say that everything about a certain gender is inherently toxic,
And see, what I
it's mad.
do,
It's kind of madness, really, to me.
it's ironic. All I do is talk about what's good about men and women and symptoms of when we're out of balance and how we can come back to good. And the people that use the phrase toxic this, they're the ones who are setting the labels. They get mad at me for setting labels, men and women. We shouldn't have any labels. And then they'll throw around toxic masculinity. They're throwing the label. We live in a crazy world now, which is very sad, actually. It's very disappointing that we have to go through this. But, you know, Winston Churchill said that you can always count on the Americans to get it right after they've done everything wrong. They're kind of leading the world in this whole gender neutrality thing.
Yeah.
Although I'd say the Scandinavian countries have contributed quite a bit too. But it really, in the universities, they what is it? The social studies propaganda of how everything is just conditioning and gender difference doesn't exist. That's just nonsense. And so now when I bring out this, they just ignore me now because they can't refute anything I say, because I say estrogen, testosterone. You even know what makes testosterone? If your game wins, you're competitive, you achieve a goal, you make more money, you get a smile from a woman, guess what happens? Testosterone goes up and you feel great. A woman, women today, they work really hard, they make a lot of money, and they're overwhelmed and stressed. They're getting paid a lot of money, but there's never enough. They feel dissatisfied. And I'm not saying all women here. I'm talking about the women who are saying there's toxic masculinity.
And it's interesting because a lot of I have quite a few female listeners to the podcast, and when I talk about certain things, and and this isn't kind of like this isn't kind of like rocket science, like show up as a dad, look after your physical health, establish boundaries and roles in your relationships and stuff and that. And this is kind of not rocket science. This is kind of quite basic stuff. And quite a few of the ladies that listen are saying, particularly the ones that are separated or divorced, they're saying, I wish my husband had access to this stuff, And the other thing that I hear a lot from guys that are separated, which underlines what you've just kind of said, is guys that are separated, quite often it performs a reset on their relationships. And the way I see this play out is that guys get into relationships, and ladies as well, they become ever more kind of invested in making the relationship work, so they give away parts of themselves in order to kind of make the relationship work. Then it reaches a stage where the kind of, the wheels are falling off the cart and they have to separate. And what happens is, for the first time in, say, 10, 20, maybe even 30 years in some cases, the guy goes off, he's getting his needs met for a period of months. So he's doing, he's getting himself in shape, he's seeing his mates, he's doing all his hobbies that he's put on hold for a period of time. He's meditating, and all of a sudden, he transforms into this awesome dude that his wife met 20 years before, and then all of a sudden a reconciliation happens and the relationship is in a better place than it's ever been for the last 2 decades. But it's purely because, and to reference your book, he's had cave time for like 60 days, 90 days, 120 days to kind of reset himself. And all of a sudden, his wife sees a guy that is highly desirable, highly attractive, and that she wants to be married to again. You know what I mean?
That was a big surprise to me after I wrote Men from Mars, because everybody recognized me for about 10 years. Well, they still do, but not as much as then, because I'm on TV all the time. And it was my generation. And always in the airports, people came up to me and said, we read the book, we were divorced or separated, we got back together after reading the book. Now, often people just need to know the skills to get back together. But then the other big factor of it that I chuckle at, and I go, yeah, but also just the fact you were separated for a while. Naturally, for many couples, not all, the ones who read the book, now they had a reason to get back together because they realized, oh, I see how I contributed to the problem, and oh, my partner looks really good. But it's not just that the man makes the change during separation when they get back together. it's also women stop looking to their husband as the cause of their unhappiness. When you're living with them, you can constantly, this is the monkey brain. If you're not happy, you look to your spouse and you feel like, oh, you're not making me happy. You're making a mess. You didn't say this. You were late. You don't love me. But as soon as he's off the table, that conversation stops for most women. Not all, because some women say, well, now I'm poor and it's because of him. So that will throw it out. But generally speaking, if she's somewhat independent and she takes her time away, now she's not depending on him to be happy. She looks to herself to be happy like she was when she was dating. She becomes the woman that he fell in love with as well. So it happens on both sides when we learn the one key principle, which is don't be so dependent on your partner to make you happy. Instead, look to your partner to make you happier. That's it. Your job, both man and woman, is to be happy. Then most anything you do without even my advanced relationship skills will work. But once you're in that place of unhappy, you need good skills to sort of get yourself back to hormonal balance. So then what you do has a positive effect on your partner instead of a negative. And when women talk about toxic masculinity, since you brought that up, there are toxic men and there are toxic women. It does exist. And in the universities tend to predominantly focus on toxic men. And let me give you an example of how it's false news. And that is, since that's in the news a lot, what can we believe? There's a thing that they say to women. This is one of the things, okay, is 1 out of 3 women will be raped. Now, rape is a horrible thing. In no way am I validating, justifying it all. The statistics is what I'm questioning. So I went to the actual foundation of where that came from. It came from a study that was commissioned by Donald Rumsfeld, one of the evildoers in the world, as far as I'm concerned, got America in that stupid Iraq war. And so Donald Rumsfeld commissioned a study at universities of women and said, have you been raped? Have you had several questions, but one is, have you been forced to have sex? But another one, have you been kissed or touched in any sexual way while under the influence of alcohol and you were inviting that touch? You were agreeable to that touch, but you were under the influence of alcohol. And if that's the case, that was considered rape. So that's 1 out of 3 women have had that happen to them, plus other things as well. But there's no discernment of what actually was violence, what actually was a grab of the butt or the breast, what actually was an unasked for kiss, or what was a asked for kiss, what was an asked for active intercourse, what was a celebratory intercourse, but under the influence of alcohol was considered by his study rape. Now that's nonsense. That's crazy. And also, what complete gender bias is that? Because if a man's under the influence of alcohol and has sex, certainly we're consider him to be responsible. A woman's under the influence, she's not responsible. That's that study. So I'm just saying there's so much mass propaganda. And then we look at the history of men and these social studies programs and how men have oppressed women. Yes. And how have men been oppressed? By the rulers, by the ruling class. See, this is when you have a man struggling to provide for his family and he doesn't get paid well enough, it raises his estrogen. And so he becomes emotionally out of balance. That triggers her. And now they're going to argue and fight and they have horrible relationships. So when men are not fairly paid for their work, they will become overly estrogen and they will misbehave. And a lot of these women, I talk with them, work with them, who consider men bad. They never had a good father. They don't know their father. They didn't have a loving father. So that's their only experience of men, is what their mother told them about father. And of course, that's one of the biggest mistakes couples make in divorce, which is, and so hard on little boys. I did all the research on that in my Boy Crisis book, which is you divorce from your partner and you're living in different houses, and one spouse says bad things about the other spouse. The kid's going back and forth, and, well, daddy lets me do this. Why don't you? Well, your dad's this. And they did a big study on this, and women were like, I think 8 times more likely to badmouth their spouse than men would badmouth a woman. Yeah,
there's a guy, funny enough, I interviewed called Matt O'Connor, who runs a movement called Fathers for Justice over here, which is kind of campaigns and lobbies for changes in the law in the UK. And one of the biggest single things that he campaigns for is for laws around what's called parental alienation, which I think is what you're describing, whereby one parent is kind of alienated by the other parent, using the kids as leverage effectively.
Yes.
And it's something that I know from, because I'm plugged into a lot of dads groups, so a lot of dads Facebook groups, so I like to, keep my finger on the pulse of what's kind of going on and what is, the top things that are troubling guys. And I can say hand on heart that in terms of guys that are separated or divorced, or they've gone through acrimonious separation proceedings, or whatever it's going to be, parental alienation is one of the biggest issues facing men who are divorced from their partners.
Yeah.
By far.
With our book, we give the understanding. I did this boy crisis with Warren Farrell, and Warren actually is a witness in many cases in America, so that the father will have equal custody. All we're looking for is equality. There's a bias in America, which women always get the child in most states. They just get it. If they want it, they get it. And Warren says it's generally an average of $100,000 in legal fees totally for a man to be able to get equal access to his children. All a woman has to say here is just that I'm scared of my husband, and she gets the kids.
Yeah.
This is really a lot of gender imbalance going on. And certainly a child is made by two parents, needs access to two parents, and two parents who are taught how to be more loving. I think that goes along with it. Unfortunately, our social system rewards single women with children. Some women just keep making babies because they get more money from the government. There's in Hawaii, for example, one client, she was with her boyfriend. He had to move out so she could get free college. And she didn't have a kid. She was just a single woman. But if she's in a relationship, she doesn't get the money. We have all these incentives for people to be separated. We're so out of balance. 50% of the boys in America don't know their father. Don't know their father. There's divorce, and they don't have access to their father. And, there's a side of it, maybe father's a jerk, there's that. But see, in my experience, this is just my experience of hundreds and thousands of people working for 40 years. My counseling practice, 10 years, and then on stage with big audiences, I bring people up and I work with them. Never do I not experience what I always experience is when somebody's the victim, I point out to them how they're equally the problem. You are equally the problem. And if you don't see that, you will always be a victim. You will keep creating that pattern until you see that you are a part of the problem. You can't change anything until you make a change within yourself. And here's the hard thing for women. For women, they work much harder on relationships. And so it's harder to see that they're contributing to the problem. They do. We as men often, at least more traditional males, work harder to make money for the family, whereas they'll work harder to be a better wife. But the problem is what they tell you how to be a better wife just doesn't work. It might have worked a long time ago, but it doesn't work now. It just doesn't work. And I could go down that rabbit hole tremendously, but there's more important things to talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think not just on this issue, but there's a number of kind of societal issues going down at the moment whereby you have got the learnings of thousands of years of evolution having taken place. And there's good aspects of that and there's bad aspects of that.
Oh yeah, how would you digest your food?
Exactly. And
instinct.
But I think, if you were to look at a business, for instance, right, in a business setting, you take the best of the old and the best of the new. So if stuff's worked for a number of hundreds of years, no business owner is going to be stupid enough to just throw that away and just say, right, that doesn't work anymore, we're going to do everything the new way. Most business owners will look at it and they'll say, right, this is the best of the old bits, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the best of the new bits and we're going to blend the two of them together to make something that is really excellent. But I think there is a tendency within society at the minute to actually say, right, what we're going to do is we're going to throw away everything that's come before on the timeline of history of human existence, which is hundreds of thousands of years, and actually something that's come up as an idea as a speck on that timeline of human existence. We're just going to wash all that away, and we're going to transplant this new idea that everyone has to conform to as a social construct. And it's looking like madness when you think about it. It's a little bit crazy, you know what I mean?
I see. I wake up every day to it. The world's becoming crazier and crazier, and it's sad. And the sad part of it affects our children a lot. Boys need, and we talk about this in the boy crisis. Boys need to experience male role models who can solve problems and not be afraid of problems. There's a role, we talk about different roles that women have and men have. So here's an example. Women tend to have the role of being afraid and protective. I'm going to protect you from problems. We need to always worry about possible things going wrong. Worry, worry, worry. Women do worry more in the brain. They have more estrogen. Estrogen creates worry if she doesn't have oxytocin to keep her safe. Okay, when her hormones go out of balance, women worry. So that's what goes on with women. When men have hormones out of balance, they say, no problem, no big deal. I'm just going to watch TV and ignore the problem. Okay, so these are imbalances. And a little imbalance is fine because we're human, we go back and forth. But for women, this is the mother, and the little boy wants to go out and play, but you have to wear this, you have to have this, and you have to do this, and this is dangerous, and you have to watch out for this. That boy's going to grow up so insecure because he has to worry about things all the time. He learned that from his mother. What would he learn from his father? He would learn that, we'll see. Not a big deal. We'll fix it if it happens. We'll solve it. We can get it done. And so here's an example of that. Mr. Fix-It versus Miss Worry, okay, or Miss Anticipate the problem. I said to my wife, when we had little children, I said, look, honey, you really need a day off, because she was feeling overwhelmed. This is a day for you to do what you love to do, because the kids put a lot of burden on everything. And I could afford to have a day off after the weekend together, then Mondays, because I'm a writer. So I'm not going to work today. I'll spend the whole day with my kids. And I love that. I bonded so much more with my kids when it was my day. That's another difference between men and women, is that if a woman's around, she tends to take control of the kids. And we're like feeling, oh, okay, if she's going to do it, I'm not going to get in the way. So we lose that bond. So I had the kids, she's away. And I remember the first day we did this, she said to me, so what are you going to do? I said, I'm not going to tell you. It's me with the kids. You just have fun time. No, I can't have fun time. I need to know what you're going to do. So that was real complimentary to me. And then, so I said, oh, okay, we're going to go to Stinson Beach. She goes, oh, that's a good idea. Approval. Did you pack jackets? I said, no. See, that's why you have to talk to me, because you don't think of those things and I think of those things. I said, no, that's not why I have to talk to you. What would have happened, me, father, being in charge of my children, I would take them to Stinson Beach if it was cold and we didn't have jackets. I would solve the problem. They would see, Dad doesn't get upset. We learn to pivot. If this doesn't work, we do this. If this doesn't work, we do this. And we don't get upset about it. We don't worry about it. Maybe somebody goes, oh, we can't be at the beach. We have to go there. I say, yeah, Dad forgot the jackets. Next time we'll try to remember, but no problem. We'll do this and we'll do this. So they need to have that experience that problems are not something to worry about so much. It's basically, you can fix it. Everything can be fixed. That's male confidence. That's testosterone. Let's get it done. Let's do it. We can do it. Now, the female side of us goes, well, wait a second. What would happen here? What would happen here? What would happen here? That's why good communication is important between parents. But a mother, if she hadn't read my book, she would think, oh, he's just taking her, without consulting the mother on what to do. He's a bad parent. Those children need to see the father being in charge of them sometimes she's in charge, them cooperating together and fighting the battles which are most significant. Like my wife and I, when it came to what the kids ate, she was cooking most of the food, so I would yield to her being the authority there, and no big deal. You got to be logical about this stuff. And, she did a lot of stuff I didn't agree with, but I just said, oh, well, she's feeding them. I'm not cooking for them, so she can make her own choices. Because more important than what they eat, more important than how protected they are on so many different things and what you're going to do, is harmony between mother and father. But if harmony between mother and father means dad has to do whatever mom says, They never get to experience the problems that occur that dad solves and fixes. There's got to be a balance here. They've got to get out there and experience that life is not always the way you want it to be, and how do you handle it?